Well, hello all, Magehammer here. Welcome to another Magehammer's Musings, episode 2. In this segment, I like to discuss some aspect of my hobby game life. In these first couple of episodes, I'm going to be focusing on the games that really shaped me into the hobby gamer that I am, and it made it a lifelong obsession and also hobby. So today, we'll be talking about the second game that really shaped me, and that's Magic the Gathering. Now, all of us have probably at least heard of Magic the Gathering. All of us have played, or at least heard of people playing Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering. These are the big two for most tabletop gamers. And I think I know why. I've already talked about the impact of Dungeons & Dragons, but Magic made hobby gaming accessible, okay? The idea, the concept of trading cards has been around for centuries, going way back. Advertising, baseball cards, then morphed into sports cards. And my father is an avid collector of sports cards, baseball, football specifically. And, you know, I grew up with my dad going out, finding cards, comic books as well. We're going to talk about comic books in another Magehammer's Musings. But trading cards is always a big thing for him. And I thought they were nice to look at, but I never really caught the fever that he caught. And that was until the idea that those trading cards that you go out and buy, you can actually play a game with. That concept, of course, it's genius. Thank you, Mr. Richard Garfield. Dr. Richard Garfield. Anyway, thank you very much, sir, because that concept pretty much changed my life, because it just is so innovative. I believe he said he was inspired by Cosmic Encounter, a game I have not played, but that Tom Vassell seems to love to death, so I've pretty much learned all about it by watching the Dice Tower. But the fact that these little pieces of cardboard put together, thrown out on a table, can bring such joy, exhilaration, and sometimes frustration is just an absolutely genius idea. And it's an idea that completely shaped and formed me into a gamer. So, let's start out with a little bit of history with Magic for me. Okay, so 1993, 23 years old. I'm out there, Dungeon and Dragoning, pretty much sticking with that, and then get wind of this trading card game. It's pretty much taking the world by storm. It's selling out everywhere. Everybody's like going crazy. It's bringing down Dungeons and Dragons because people are spending money on these cards and playing this game, and Dungeons and Dragons is starting to kind of fade into the background a little bit. And I'm like, what? Dungeons and Dragons? Nothing's gonna ever dethrone Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, come on. That shaped my life. And because of that, 23-year-old me said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to look into that game because, hey, it's taking down Dungeons and Dragons. I got to keep my brand strong. Then I learned that TSR is going to come out with their own game in 1993 or 94, I believe it was 94, called Spellfire. Now, I said, well, then I'm just going to play Spellfire. I mean, I looked at Magic. I was like, oh, okay, but, I was being a little bit snobby. But when Spellfire came out, I was like, ha, TSR. See? That's my brand. I'm loyal to them. They've given me hours upon hours of joy in my life. So I'm gonna play Spellfire. And, it used art from the Dungeons & Dragons books that I loved, It's Gord the Rogue on that one. It's from Dragon Mountain. This is from the Forgotten Realms map out of the second edition. Out of the second edition stuff, right? And I was like, well, I'm gonna play Spellfire. So I started spending money on Spellfire, and I started playing Spellfire. I'm like, well, we're gonna get this Magic the Gathering to give us Dungeons and Dragons back. But I played Spellfire, and it was not good. It just was not engaging. It wasn't fun. It didn't do anything for me. And essentially, they became really cool bookmarks for my Dungeons and Dragons books. So I tried, though. I tried. And finally, I got over my snobbery and I said, this Magic the Gathering thing seems to be for real. So I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna buy some starter packs, booster packs, whatever they were called back then. And I'm gonna see what I can do about putting together a deck and trying to play. So in my mall, there was a kiosk that was basically it literally pretty much grew up out of Magic the Gathering. It was an extension of a local local gaming store around here that was selling Magic. And then the owner of that decided he didn't want the kiosk anymore, so he sold it to one of his employees. And then that employee, basically that was his business for a while, was running that kiosk out of our local mall. And so I started there. And I asked him to teach me a game. And, I bought cards off him. And from the very first Magic card that I touched or I played, I was like, whoa. I was completely under its spell. I was like, whoa, this game, the idea of the color mana and just the concepts that he taught it to me, I learned it pretty quickly. I think it was, spent years figuring out Dungeons and Dragons rules. So I started playing it, and I just went right down into the Magic the Gathering hole. And I started playing it like crazy, became obsessed. I spent most of my time at that kiosk after student teaching. It's kind of my escape, going there, playing against him, learning new things. One of my former students was big into Magic. He was there. He had gotten into it before me, and I played against him. So it just grabbed me from the very beginning. We still play Dungeons and Dragons, though. It didn't replace it for me. So then that's also another point I realized, well, you know what? There's room enough in my life for more than one game. And if you look around this room, even in the background here, you can tell that I'm into quite a few different games. So, but I'll be showing more of that eventually. So I said, well, okay, I'm playing Magic. And I just started to play, spent a lot of money on it, traded cards, bought cards. I didn't buy that many singles back then. I decided I wanted to get as many cards as I could. So I bought a lot of packs, a lot of starters. I got my then girlfriend into it. She and I played a lot, and we'd be playing. And then after we were done playing, she would beat me a lot. I would go home and I'd tweak my deck immediately. I was like, no, I'm not gonna lose to anybody. I'm gonna make my deck better. And that was, I think that's one of the things about Magic, that it's that the components of it, that you can improve your deck and you gain a sense of ownership over that deck. And now remember, this was before the internet blew up, right? So when you build a deck, you build a deck. There was the Duelist magazine. I have several of those issues laying around in some storage bins here in my basement, and they would have some deck suggestions. I bought a Magic the Gathering strategy guide written by Rich Garfield himself. I have that around here somewhere as well. I looked for it before this video. I couldn't find it. Maybe eventually, if I find it, I'll post up a picture somewhere, maybe in the comments. But anyway, I read all the strategy I could, all the advice that I could, and I've never really been a competitive player as far as gaming goes. I'm a competitive person. I never really was competitive in gaming. If I lost, I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't, I would move on to the next game. And that was another reason I kind of like Dungeons and Dragons a lot, because it really wasn't competitive. But this was competitive, head to head. Let's do it. And that really also kind of brought out the competitor in me, the nature of the game. So, played my girlfriend, bought her a bunch of cards. She and I would go in together and get boxes of booster packs and crack them open, and oh my gosh, and then I got my best friend into it, and at that time he was living out in Boston, and I took pretty much every Magic card I had, took it with me across the country, well, 12 hours down the road here, and I said, here's this game, you gotta check this out, because I know his little analytical brain, big analytical brain, was gonna love it, and it did. And I had so many cards that I wanted to make his own decks, and we played in Boston quite a bit, and I taught him the game, and he did enjoy it. And then he kind of fell down the hole a little bit, but mostly to be able to play with me and my other friends at the time. So that it became, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic, like two greatest games ever invented. I played those constantly. Pokemon came along. Pokemon was for kids. That was, 20-some-year-old me saying that. And I said, no, Magic. Definitely not Spellfire. Dungeons and Dragons, Magic pretty much was the dominating tabletop hobby games of my life at that time. And then I got an apartment, and I got and then eventually a year or two after, I got roommates, and those roommates, guys I coached speech with, I got them into Magic. So we started playing Magic, like, I'd come home from work, they were ready to come home from work, whatever, and we'd just sit down and just play Magic into the evening, into the night. We had the thing called the Classic, and we'd bring my best friend, who by that time was living in Cleveland, we'd bring him down. Those guys would just gather around in our apartment and just play all weekend, and then once we bought houses, it turned into that. I mean, we played Magic for a very, very long time, and it was a dominant hobby force in my life. I have tens of thousands of cards here. Then Magic slowly started to die out for me. I mean, I think that happens to a lot of people with many different things. And it started to not be as obsessive. And to be honest, what really started to set me down that spiral was the mana system. And I know that you've probably seen people talk about this in videos on this before in the past, but it's such a negative play experience to sit there with no mana, no matter how many lands I see to put in my deck. Sit there with no mana, just watch them play, plow you under and kill you. Or you all you keep drawing is land. Oh, I need this creature. I need a creature. I need this. I have this answer. I have an answer to their what they've got on the board, their board state. I've got an answer. Nope, land, done. And it didn't happen every time, but it started. And we played so many games that it started to happen enough that no matter what I did, followed strategy tips, and by this time the internet was out there, magazines, internet, followed strategy tips. Mana curves, how much mana you should have if you have this many mana symbols in your deck, and I know there's a whole science behind it, but in the end, I think that's really what really soured me on Magic. And I said, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And it kind of faded out. Those guys moved on into their lives. The classics started to fade out a little bit, and Magic just kind of faded for us. Because for the longest time, even without the classic, we'd get together once or twice a month, just play Magic, and it was a really good time. But in the end, I just really started to get kind of frustrated with it, and I kind of lost my taste for it. So then, at that point, I was getting into other games. Dream Blade, for example. Dungeon Dragons, always Dungeon Dragons. Other role-playing games, as you've heard about my Dungeon Dragons journey. And so I started to sell off my dual lands because eBay was a thing, and I would take that money I'd get from that, and I would go ahead and buy other games because Magic was pretty much done for me. But I knew that I always wanted to keep most of my cards so that if my kids ever got into it, they would have quite a pool to pull from, the old days and all that stuff, and they would pull from it. Now, I unfortunately didn't get in with Alpha and Beta because of my gamer stubbornness. I pretty much started with Revised. Revised is where the sweet spot was at for me. That's where I really started in. Legends was still kind of out there. I found some Legends packs out in Boston, in nature. In nature, I found them at a game shop down there and bought them in actual packs because up to that time I could only buy Legends singles. And so I found them in packs. I was like, oh, wow, that was exciting. I've opened God packs. For those of you who don't know what God packs are, they somehow, some way in the process, it's all rares or all foils. And so I opened several packs of those that were all rares. That was exciting, fun. Magic had a lot going for it. But like I said, it ended up fading out for me. And I didn't have the big money cards, huge money cards. I missed the boat on that. But I had enough to be able to buy new games, and that's where I was, and that's where I was at for a long time. Then I started the Tabletop Game Society, and I had kept several of my decks together, and kids are still into Magic, which is great to see. And they always want to challenge me, So I'll do some gunslinging and I'll Magic the Gathering it up with them, you know. And that's fun. I have some pretty decent decks. They like seeing the old cards out in nature and playing against them. It's kind of fun. But I never really got heavy into it again. And to this day, I have a huge respect for the game. I love the game. And then my Magic the Gathering group, we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And that's one group I still continue to play with online through Google Meets. Back then, we took a break from Magic for a while and played 3.5. We'd play at the one buddy's house. You know, we get together a month, and every once or twice a month, and we play Dungeons and Dragons. And Magic kind of went away. Then Magic came back for a while, and then it faded. And then a couple years later, we picked it back up as our lives kind of stabilized, and we started playing D&D, and we're still playing to this day, playing D&D. So that's been a lot of fun. But Magic even kind of faded out there and became Dungeons and Dragons for us. So then I tried Magic Online for a while, and you know, I think I found it pretty much just as addicting as Magic, and I played it, and you know, I was a new father, and it was nice after we got the kids to bed, and my wife got to bed, and I'd play a couple games of Magic, but I couldn't keep up price-wise, and I couldn't keep up, and I had good cards, but I just couldn't build effective decks against these guys that are dropping, you know, I mean, Magic is pay to play. I mean, we can have that debate till the end of time, but it really is pay to play. And I just couldn't keep up, and it just started to have negative play experiences. I'd win a game here, a game there. I just couldn't win. And I don't mind losing. I don't mind winning. But I don't, when you go into an experience and you're playing a game and you know that there's only a 10% chance of you winning that game, it's just not fun. So I, you know, moved on, kept going with board games at that point, I believe, always role-playing games. So that's pretty much where I put my energy, and Magic Online just faded out. And my buddies, some of my buddies from my old D&D group, which were also my current D&D group, we were still playing, they got into World of Warcraft heavy, and I'm like, well, you guys are spending $15 a month. I tell you, I could play $4 or $5 a month and play Magic instead, you know. But then in the end, my negative play experience just ruined that for me. Land screwed, just decks I just couldn't keep up with. So I did go through Magic Online's phase. I have no idea. I can't remember what cards I have. I haven't opened my Magic Online account in decades. I don't know. It's been a long time. But then enter Magic the Gathering Arena, and that's where I am today. I said, okay, it's different than Magic Online. It's smoother. It's got great graphics. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to play Magic the Gathering and see what this is about, and see if it can kind of recapture some of that old magic for me, if you'll forgive the pun. And when it first came out, I didn't really have the machine to play it on. I played it a little bit, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's Magic. That's fun. And then it faded out. But then recently, I started using GeForce Now, and I bought a Chromebook. I pretty much exclusively use Chromebooks now. I got sick of Windows. Never really got into Macs. They were just too expensive for where I was in my life at the time that they really became a thing. But Chromebooks always just are my jam, I guess, for lack of a better term. And when GeForce Now came out and I was able to play Magic the Gathering through my Chromebook, I was like, ooh, okay, let's do it. Arena looks like it's great. I kind of enjoyed it the last time, but I kind of stopped because of the technological barriers. But now I don't have that barrier anymore. Let me try again. And you know what? During this pandemic especially, I've been playing it a lot. And then what I learned is that I pretty much play standard ranked. And when I play standard ranked, they have the mana smoothing, they call it, where you're less likely in your opening hands to get mana screwed one way or the other. And there's still the mulligan rules, so if you do get screwed, you're able to mulligan, and I like the mulligan where you take it and put it on the bottom of the deck. And I know I don't play the best of three because I don't smooth the mana there. I play standard ranked, it's one game, and you move on to a new opponent, win or lose. And I also think that their way that you acquire cards is great. It's fair and it's fun. You get rewarded for just playing, but you can also drop some money. Up to this day, I have dropped $45 on Magic the Gathering Arena for months upon months of play. But with their reward system, I've built some very effective decks, and I feel like I win enough that it's not a negative play experience. Or I win enough that if I lose, I'm like, well, okay, I won 4 in a row and I've lost 2 in a row. Okay, that's pretty good odds, and I'm really loving it. And I get to see all the new Magic cards come out. And so I play pretty regularly Magic the Gathering Arena for now. Try to get my daily rewards and play several games, open a couple packs, and I'm done. It's great. I love it. I do love the game. It's just the mana system just, burned me out. I did move on to other trading card games. I'm going to be talking about them in other Magehammer's Musings. So, to recap, I have a long history of Magic the Gathering, pretty much been playing since 93, 94, and took some hiatus time, and now I'm back. I'm still not buying physical cards because I got plenty, and I'm just enjoying playing on Arena anyway. And I'm tempted to buy the Forgotten Realms, the melding of D&D and Magic into one. I'm loving playing on Arena. I might buy some physical cards, but more as a collector than to just play them. So I'm looking into that. I'll keep you guys posted on that. And so the thing about Magic is it opened up wide game design. And I have been the beneficiary of it, not just playing it, but all the wonderful games that came out that inspired people to play Magic the Gathering. And I've been playing them inadvertently, board games, other card games, and it is yet another game that has changed my life. So that's all for now. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy these musings of mine. If you'd like to comment about your experiences with Magic the Gathering in the comments, that'd be great. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you again in the next video, and keep on gaming.